our pilgrimage today, I was digging through some of my old papers of the talks which I have given on these pilgrimages, and I found this one dated the 13th of June 1998, pilgrimage to St Fursey's Monastery, Burgh Castle, and the title of the talk was The Origins of Christianity in Norfolk, with special reference to St Fursey of Burgh Castle. So that was when I was still Anglican. That I left the CV the following month, in July. Here we go. And I mentioned here in the beginning of the talk about the pilgrimages we had previously. There was a little group of us in my 3 Anglican parishes who were very keen on becoming Orthodox with me. And we had these pilgrimages before we left. So here we are. Imagine 25 years ago here, 1998. This will be our 5th pilgrimage. We came to the site of St Fursey's Monastery in 1993. Our 2nd pilgrimage was to the Anglo-Saxon Church of Cockley Clay. Our 3rd pilgrimage was to the Anglo-Saxon Cathedral in North Elmham. And last year we visited St Withburg as well at Dereham. And now we have returned to St Fursey's Monastery at Burgh Castle. The purpose of our pilgrimages has been to arouse interest in the origins of the Christian faith in our country when England was Orthodox, and in extending our knowledge of the faith in our land, as it is hoped that it will deepen our Christian faith and help us to recover and return to the original Christian faith. Although St Fursey came to Norfolk about the year 630, when the East Angles were still largely pagan, they had been here a little more than 100 years. There is evidence for the Christian faith being here in Roman times. The nearest excavated Christian church from Roman times can be found just over the border in Suffolk at Icklingham, and is about the same size and design as the Anglo-Saxon church of the 7th century at Cockley Clay. There are 2 villages in Norfolk called Eccles. One is near us in the old Waxham deanery on the coast, and the other near Attleborough. Eccles is the ancient British or Celtic name for a church, a Christian place of worship. Also, in various places throughout Norfolk, various items of a Roman date have been found with Christian motives on them, such as a lead plaque from Scole with the Cairo symbol on it, and also lead tanks at Oxborough and Stoke Ferry, evidently used for Christian baptisms. However, it seems that the Christianity of Roman Norfolk did not long survive the withdrawal of the Roman legions in 410, and the Angles and Saxons were already on the prowl, if not already settled in the area. Pagan cemeteries have been found all over Norfolk, dating from the 5th or 6th centuries. Cremation was the pagan burial custom. Note, cremation is a pagan burial custom, not something that Orthodox Christians can consider. The Kingdom of East Anglia was founded during the second half of the 6th century by a chieftain called Wulfr. He gave his name to the Wulfringer dynasty of East Anglian kings. He and his son, Title, are very shadowy. The first real king of East Anglia that we know anything about is Title's son, Redwald, who became king round about the year 600. And his base was at Rendlesham in Suffolk. His kingdom covered Suffolk, Norfolk and Cambridgeshire, but he had an important base at Cockley Clay, which controlled the major north-south route along the Icknield Roman road and a major east-west route into Mercia, where another kingdom was forming. Redwald formed an alliance with King Ethelbert of Kent, the overlord of the English and a Christian too. For political convenience, but without much sincerity, Redwald was baptized and allowed Christian missionaries into his kingdom. His power increased and his kingdom spread into Bedfordshire, Northamptonshire and Lincolnshire, and it became the sub-kingdom of Lindsey. The position of Cockley Clay as a centre of his power increased, and hence its significance for early Christian missionaries. King Ethelbert of Kent died in 616, and Redwald was soon acknowledged as the overlord of all the English. Although he had been baptized and allowed Christian missionaries into his kingdom, he hedged his bets and also allowed the continuance of pagan worship, so as not to alienate his pagan nobles and his queen. Redwald, he was murdered in 628, and a period of confusion ensued. Eventually, the nobles invited Sigbert, a younger brother of Redwald, to become king in East Anglia, coming back from exile in Burgundy. Perhaps he had been driven there by the jealousy of Redwald, as Sigbert was a popular warrior. However, Sigbert had become a Christian in Burgundy, and he invited his friend Felix to come to East Anglia, and Felix was consecrated bishop by Archbishop Honorius of Canterbury. St. Felix established his see at Dunwich, near to the King's Court at Rendlesham. He founded several monasteries and schools, such as at Loddon and Reedham and North Elmham, and the latter place became the Cathedral of Norfolk when the diocese was split. During the reign of King Sigbert, St. Fursey arrived from Ireland. St. Fursey came from princely stock, and he made a considerable impact on King Sigbert, who gave him the remains of this Roman fort in which to build his monastery, and this occurred about the year 630. It is interesting to note that although St. Felix was active as bishop over East Anglia, there is no reference to him in East Norfolk, the area where there are many round-towered churches. This was probably the area of St. Fursey's work based on Burgh Castle. The Venerable Bede, writing in about the year 710, says this: "During Sigbert's reign, there came from Ireland a holy man named Fursey, renowned for his words and doings, and outstanding virtue. His purpose was to spend his life as a pilgrim for the love of the Lord, and to go wherever he found an opening. On his arrival in the province of East Anglia, he was honourably received by the king and preached the gospel as he always did. Inspired by the example of his goodness and the effectiveness of his teaching, many believers were converted to Christ, and many who already believed were drawn to a greater love and faith. He then goes on to describe St. Fursey's visions and prayers and vigils, and the building of the monastery on this site, given to him by King Sigbert. If you have a look at the walls of the Roman fort, you can see the slots cut into the Roman masonry, which held the roof timbers of what was an aisled building, perhaps St. Fursey's Church. This area was excavated by the archaeologist Mr. Green in 1956, an eminent archaeologist of his day. And there were also Christian burials nearby, and also evidence for circular buildings of a post-Roman date, which were probably the monastic cells of St. Fursey's Monastery. St. Fursey was associated in this missionary work by his two brothers, Phelan and Altan, and by two priests, Goban and Dickel. We know next to nothing about Goban, but it is possible that Dickel gave his name to the village of Dickelborough on the A140 towards Diss. The name of the parish borough means a hill in Anglo-Saxon, but the first element, Dickel, evidently comes from a Celtic or Irish name. There is no evidence of any Anglo-Saxon source for the name Dickel. The only person in early Anglo-Saxon Norfolk with a name like Dickel was St. Fursey's companion. Now there's an interesting coincidence. Having built his monastery at Burgh Castle on a site pleasantly situated among some woods close to the sea, within the area of a fortification, to use the Venerable Bede's words, St. Fursey began to long to be rid of all the worldly business of the monastery. Even the affairs of the monastery were becoming a burden to him, and so he entrusted the affairs of the monastery and the St. Fursey had another brother named Altan, who after some years in the monastery also adopted a life of a hermit. So Fursey sought him out, and together they shared a life of prayer and austerity. And those of you who visited Cockley Clay will also remember the burial of a hermit in the apse of that little church. Could that possibly be the mortal remains of either Altan or Dickel, or even Goban? We do not know. The Venerable Bede ends his story by telling us that St. Fursey foresaw the coming of the heathen, Mercians, and he even foresaw the danger to his monastery. He set his affairs in order and sailed over the sea to Gaul. He was welcomed by King Clovis III and his chamberlain Erkenwald, who was building a church in his native town of Perone. St. Fursey fell sick and died about the year 650, and Erkenwald placed his body in the porch of his incomplete church, until it was due for consecration, and this happened 27 days later, when St. Fursey's body was found to be free of any corruption or decay. And 4 years later, a more suitable chapel was built, and his still incorrupt body was transferred into it with great honour. And St. Bede says, I have briefly recorded these events and the incorruption of his body, so that the reader may understand more clearly how great a man St. Fursey was. It is clear that the Venerable Bede had a very high regard for St. Fursey, a Celtic saint from Ireland, who did much to bring the pagan Anglo-Saxons, East Anglians, to the Orthodox Christian faith. St. Fursey is commemorated on January the 16th in the calendar of Orthodox saints. After St. Fursey's death, St. Phelan, his brother, cared for the monastery at Perone, as he had done when St. Fursey left Burgh Castle. He was murdered in the forest near Fursey in Belgium, near to the monastery he had founded for Irish travellers. St. Phelan is commemorated in the calendar of Orthodox Church on October the 30th. His murder occurred about the year 655. Let us now return to East Anglia and King Sigbert. We have already seen how he founded many monasteries and schools throughout his kingdom, and supported the work of St. Felix, his bishop, and the missionary work of St. Fursey. The Venerable Bede tells us, King Sigbert became so ardent in his love for the kingdom of heaven that he abandoned the affairs of his earthly kingdom and entrusted them to his kinsman Egric, who already governed a part of the kingdom. He then entered a monastery that he had founded, and after receiving the tonsure of a monk, devoted his energies to winning the everlasting kingdom. A considerable while later, the Mercians, led by the pagan King Penda, attacked the East Angles, who, finding themselves less experienced in warfare, asked Sigbert to go into battle with them, and so foster the morale of the fighting men. But Sigbert refused, and so they dragged him from his monastery, regardless of his protests, and took him into battle with them, in the hope that their men would be less inclined to panic or thinking of flight if they were under the eye of one who had been such a great soldier in the past. But conscious of his monastic vow and surrounded by a well-disciplined army, he refused to carry anything but his monk's stick. And when the heathen charged, both he and King Egric were killed, and the army scattered. This happened on September the 27th, 635, and King Sigbert is also honoured in the Orthodox Church as a saint and martyr, and is commemorated on September the 27th. So that's why we've come here today. After a period of confusion, the nobles of the Kingdom of East Anglia chose Anna, another kinsman of Sigbert, to be king. He also was a devout Christian and had a family of 5 daughters and 1 son. His 5 daughters were also counted among the saints. Among them were Withburga, Ethelburga, Ethelreda, Sethrieda, and Sexburger. Although we went to the site of where Burgh established her monastery in Dereham. And it's also noteworthy that King Anna was also killed in battle by Penda in 654, and that battle was near Blytheborough, and so Anna is counted as a Orthodox Christian martyr too, and his daughters are also commemorated in the Orthodox calendar, and also his son Jermin was killed in battle with him, and they were honoured at Blytheborough until the Great Schism. I would like to end this talk on the origins of the Orthodox Christian Church here in Norfolk by reflecting upon the nature of our belief in the communion of the saints. We enter into the risen life of Christ in our baptism. He is the God of the living, not the dead, he said. So the saints we have thought of today are very much alive, and we enter into communion with them in our worship. And so in our earthly worship, we are joined also by the worship of the angels and saints. And in this way, we experience their presence with us. So there we go. Ford was persuaded to become a Christian by Edwin